Today we're going to be looking at different types of text features in a nonfiction text. So I borrowed this book from the science department to use as an example to show you what type of features you can find in a nonfiction text. So we are going to open up the book and head to the first section, which is the table of contents. You can see the table of contents right over here. So in the table of contents, you can see that we have multiple units. So here's our first unit right here, and we have a total of 6. So when you look at here, you can see the first unit is motions and forces, and that starts on page 2, which you can tell from this number over here. Underneath the motion and forces, we have chapter 1, which is the nature of science, on page 4, motion on page 42, and forces in Newton's law on page 70. So you can tell all of that by looking at our table of contents. You can see everything that's going to be in the book. Down here at the end, after we finish Unit 6, we have the student resources on page 768. That involves a skill handbook, a science skill handbook, a math skill handbook, additional practice problems, a reference handbook, a glossary, an index, and credits. We'll come back to a couple of those sections later as we get to the end of the book. So the first thing we're going to look at is we're just going to go ahead and look at Unit 1. So Unit 1 starts on page 2. So here is the first page of Unit 1, Chapter 1 of Unit 1. And as you look in here, you'll start to see some of the different ways that you can read a nonfiction text. So the first thing we see is our title of the chapter, which is Methods of Science. And then we're going to head down a little bit further, and they're going to give us, right here, what is science? So they're going to give us a header. The header is one of the things that tells us what the section we're reading is going to be about. So the question they're going to be answering in this section is, what is science? So you know the general idea of what you're going to be reading about. Underneath that, they break it down even further into subheaders, which includes major categories of science and science changes. So just by looking at the headers, you're going to get an overview of what this chapter is about. These are extremely helpful if you're writing a summary. You can look back at the headers and they will help remind you what is going on in that chapter and what's going on in the different parts of the chapter. Another thing that we notice as we look here, they have in bold letters the words Figure 1. So it says, scientists such as the ones shown in Figure 1 ask questions and make observations about the rules that govern the natural world. So if we look down here, we find that it says Figure 1 here at the bottom next to this image. So where it says Figure 1, it explains what they're talking about in that statement. They're explaining this image that relates to what they're talking about. It gives you a connection to the text. So they're showing you in this image how a scientist is putting a transmitter on a turtle's back to investigate the speed, location, food, and other things about the turtles. But you can find all of that when you see a Figure 1 or a Figure 2, which leads you up here, and it will connect the images in the book to the text. Another thing you're going to find is over to the side here, they ask essential questions. So the essential questions are questions that you are going to answer through reading this text. You're going to find out these answers by the time you finish reading section 1. You will also find out what all of these vocabulary words mean. So you have words such as scientific method, hypothesis, experiment, and so on. As you continue through the chapter, you will see that these words are highlighted so that you can find where they are in the text and that you'll be able to define them based on the words that are around them. So you will see here it says the pattern of investigation procedures is called the scientific method. So they are defining the word scientific method in this paragraph where they have the highlighted word. They also, in addition to the figure one, the figures that match to the images, they also have tables which match to portions of information. But when you're reading, it's important to look at these things because they give you information about what you're reading in addition to what's just in the text. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to flip back to the table of contents. At the beginning, we said we were going to talk about some of the things under the student resources. So we are going to go next and find the glossary, which is on page 818. This is the glossary. The glossary is similar to the highlighted words we just saw. The highlighted words are all found here in the back of the book so that you can easily find all the definitions for these words. So if you ever have a word that you don't know what it means in the text, you can look back here and this will help you figure out the meaning. For example, we had looked at earlier the scientific method. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to find the scientific method. This is all in alphabetical order. So it should be here somewhere. Right here. Scientific method. A pattern of investigation procedures that can include stating a problem, forming a hypothesis, research and gathering information, testing a hypothesis, analyzing data, and drawing conclusions. This also includes the page number where you can find the definition. So, if you ever need to know a word, if you need to know where to look back to find the word, you can look here and it will give you the information you need. The next section is the index. So this is the index here. If you are curious about a topic or if you need to find a specific piece of information, you look to the index. The index will give you the page numbers for every time that word or idea is mentioned in the book. For example, you can see here with acids, they talk about it on all of these pages here. So they start around 260, they say something about it. They talk about acid precipitation on 260, and then they start talking about acids on page 678, and all of these pages in the index, they tell you right here if it's an illustration and different things about what you're looking for. So let's say, for example, let's use the scientific method again. I want to find the scientific method. I'm going to go into the index and I am going to find the S's. Then I am going to scan through here. It's all in alphabetical order again. And I am going to find where it talks about the scientific method. Right here. So the scientific method they talk about on pages 8 through 11 and on page 36. So if I go back to the book and I look at page 36, you can see they talk about the scientific methods. If I go back to pages 8 through 11, this whole section has the header of scientific method, and then it has a bunch of subheaders under it telling you all about it. And you can see once you get to page 12, they've moved on to a new topic, visualizing with models. So all of this 8 through 11 is about scientific method. And you were able to tell that by looking back into the index and finding where they talk about the scientific method. So what we're going to do next is there is one more text feature that I wanted to show you. They do not have it in this book. So we are going to go look at this book right here real quick. So we are going to take a look at footnotes right here. So starting on chapter 1, we go right here, we see this man's name. And at the end of it, there was a teeny tiny 1 right here at the top. And that 1 is going to give us more information about him. So if we go all the way back to the back of the book, around where the index is, just before, we want to be in the notes section. And you can see that 1 matches with this one. Oh, sorry, we are in chapter 1. That 1 matches with this 1. And you can see that while the quote that man was saying is often attributed to him, they think that that's not correct. So they're just correcting themselves. They're giving additional information to what we found up here. So those are some of the types of text features that you can find in a nonfiction text.